Alright guys, we're going to bring this project home with a little bit of fine tuning and adding some adjustments and effects to our various layers here. So at this point I have all my colors. We talked about refining our design and kind of making some hand adjustments on some of the different areas to make it symmetrical and just look as good as possible. So this looks good, but I still feel like my hierarchy is a little lacking, so I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to click on my tertiary color group, and this has all of my skulls, in this folder, but I can click on the group, and if I take the opacity of that group, I can just drop that opacity a little bit, and that has a pretty nice effect to just bring a little bit more attention to the skateboards and the primary colors here, my skateboarder. So I think just for me, that is something that works for my particular design. So dropping the opacity on an entire group, you could do that. Now you want to be careful. If I do that on the secondary group, the problem is now I'm going to see the layer below it, so I'm not sure that's going to work for that group, but it is something that works for that. Let's try something else. I can apply a layer style to this whole group. So if I feel like I still want to do something like that with the skateboard layer, I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to click a layer adjustment, and I'm going to pick, I could do brightness and contrast, but I like levels because it gives you a little bit more control. So I'm going to click on that, and you get this adjustment layer that pops up and some different things that we can do over here. Now if you can't see everything, just make that window bigger. And typically I move around the top part, and now you can see that's adjusting everything below it. So what I need to do is I need to make that a clipping mask, so it's not doing the skulls too. So right click and clipping mask, and now that only affects the skateboards. This is kind of having the opposite effect that I want to do. That makes it darker, but I'm going to try this one down below. So I think if I take this, nope, other direction, let's bring the white level down. That kind of has the same effect as transparency without making it actually transparent. So that is one quick thing that I could do, is I could add a levels adjustment to my folder, make it a clipping mask, and then maybe just kind of play around with this so I get a little bit more contrast between primaries and secondaries. An option, okay? I can hide that right there. All right. So here's one cool thing that I really think you guys will like exploring, and that is to add a layer effect or a style. So I'm going to click on my primary color folder here, and I'm going to double click over here, and you get this window that pops up, and you're like, whoa, what is this? There's a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm sure some of you guys have clicked on this at some point, and then we're like, what is happening? What am I doing here? This is a layer style, so you have all different types of options and things that you can apply to the layer, or in this case group of layers, in this folder. So I'm going to recommend for this particular project we try either the outer glow or drop shadow. I'm going to start with the outer glow because it's a little easier to see. So if I click on the word outer glow, you see the options kind of change over here, and you can mess around with how this applies to your cutouts. It takes a little bit of fine tuning. You could definitely overdo it if you're not careful. I mean, you could basically create almost like a hard outline on something if you wanted, or you wanted it kind of subtle. You can just play around with some of those settings. So that is one option. I don't know if I want to use a glow on this. I think I might use the drop shadow. So I'm going to click on drop shadow, and that's going to have kind of the opposite effect. It's going to add a darkness to it. Now you want to be careful. I can see I'm moving the distance, and literally you can see that shadow moving away from the subject. So I'm going to keep the distance for my drop shadow at 0, and I'm just going to play around with some of these other settings, size and spread, and just kind of see what happens there. Personally, I think I like that. So if I check and uncheck preview, there it is without. There it is with, and that just kind of brings a little bit more attention to that. So I'm going to hit OK, and that kind of adds that layer effect right over top of it. So I can, click that little icon. That's going to affect all the layers inside of my primary color folder. And if you decide, nah, I really didn't want that, you can either just hide it temporarily, or you can drag the effects to the trash can and just delete that entire layer style. But that's kind of nice, and maybe I would go back and like the tertiary colors, maybe I'd want to add the opposite. What if I want to do a glow on that? Outer glow, and right there looks actually pretty good. That's too harsh, but see a little bit of kind of a glow on those skulls. Looks kind of nice. Try that. It's kind of cool. And then maybe I do the same thing for the secondary. You can actually copy a layer style if you want. You're like, I like what I did here, I want to copy it. Click on the effects, and if you hold down the Alt key, I should be able to drag that and add that right to this folder. You can see it moving, and I drop that right there, and that's going to add that very same effect to my skateboard. So if you have one that you like, you can actually like move it from one area to the other. Oh, you know what? It didn't go with it though. Interesting. If I hold down Alt, it's actually moving it. So never mind. You got to double click, reapply, but if you click on it, your settings from the previous one should be saved. So that looks like it's doing the same thing, and I think that helps. I might just knock this down a little bit. It's not quite as dramatic. And there we go. So a few different things that you can do to bring this project home. If we take a look at it with the effects and then without, so here's what it looks like with all those effects, and if I hide those effects, there's what it is without. Plus I also dropped the opacity on the tertiary and added that levels effect there. I think those are nice little things that you can kind of dial in to really bring that project to the finish line. So explore with some of those things. See what you can do to fine-tune your project, and I look forward to seeing what you guys create.